I'm Eric Pulier. I'm the founder and CEO of Atom. Atom's been an ongoing, incredibly rewarding and enjoyable journey. I've built 16 companies over the years in terms of being a co-founder or a founder. I've invested in hundreds of others and watched them grow. And the thing that I enjoy the most is when you're part of something in the early stages that you can see very clearly is going to have an impact. In early 2015 was when I was sitting here at Harvell's and had this vision of a non-fungible version of Bitcoin that would be a beer. And the idea of that was I wanted something that was really relatable. So the beer at first really started with this idea like, could we create something that was fun to use, that could move as a virtual atom across planes of reality? Because I have it on my phone, I would then put it on the table in augmented reality. Someone else could see it in augmented reality and pick it up, and it would change state based on various phenomena that it would either know or that would occur based on acting on it. So it's suddenly a coupon, suddenly a game piece, suddenly could be an access token, a ticket, into the back room, to a VIP experience. So the first one was a beer, and from there, everything else unfolded.
My name is Greg Pulier. I am an entrepreneur and I work for myself, very often working with my brother on entrepreneurial endeavors. My brother was very excited about the idea of creating digital objects that had a sense of being like real world objects. I think he thinks it was at the beginning of blockchain. I think it was even before anyone was talking about blockchain. He just thought it was a great idea. He wanted to see it realized. He saw a lot of applications in marketing and in other world things. And I actually do agree that the evolution of computer interfaces in general tend to move towards things that we naturally know how to interact with. The most natural thing being the real world made up of objects. So the idea that the future interface of technology is essentially the real world is kind of a no-brainer, but he was putting it in very concrete terms, as opposed to where we had come from, which is, hey, a desktop's a pretty good metaphor, which was Xerox's idea. So I think we're moving towards that. But as this has happened, there's been a lot of other ways of applying this concept, and that's what's happened.
I think it's really profound that Eric invented the NFT here in Harvell's and here in LA, in this epicenter of culture and art and music and entertainment and technology and blockchain and gaming, all here in Los Angeles. Hearing his story, it made a lot of sense because I come from the food tech business and e-commerce, and this idea of digital rewards is ubiquitous. We all enjoy that experience. I like getting those points to get a free cup of coffee when I go to my favorite coffee shop. But fundamentally, that reward belongs in someone else's database, someone else's CRM. You don't own it. You own it as long as you sort of go to that store. This idea that you can own something digitally, independent of any other entity having sort of control over that ownership is really powerful.
I'm Lior Hakim. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Our One. Everything that happens with art and collections and collectibles of NFT wasn't even imagined when we first started, but that was just so cool to my mind. And I personally really like NFTs and how it transitioned to art and other fields of ideas where you can create tremendous amount of value and then distribute that value and make it tradable and digital.
Hi, I'm Erin McPherson. I'm the former Chief Content Officer of Verizon. I've worked in media and entertainment my entire career, primarily the intersection of technology and content and how technology can enable democratization of content. So early on in the sort of birth of NFTs, Verizon partnered with AMC Networks on its very popular show, The Walking Dead, and issued a series of limited edition NFTs. The speed with which customers grabbed those up, and it was a giveaway, but they were gone incredibly quickly, just gone. I think it was less than 48 hours. People grabbed them up. Not only do people know what NFTs are, they love them. And when we just put it on our website that we're giving them away, they'll take the actions needed to go redeem them. That's really exciting. And I think that's where the market is ready to go now that the first boom happened and the higher ups upstairs see the sky isn't falling and these aren't one-off baseball cards. These are actually means to engage and enhance and develop a customer-consumer relationship.
Peter Diamandis, I'm the founder and executive chairman of the X Prize Foundation. The first time I ever heard of an NFT was actually from Eric Poulier, who's been a dear friend. He's been an advisor. He's one of my best friends on the planet, first and foremost. And he's been one of our innovation board members at the X Prize. And he has really worked with us to try and reinvent how the X Prize tokenizes what we do, right? How we take what we do and make it something that the world can participate in. What if we were able to create a situation where the public was involved in helping to fund these prizes, was involved in helping to support the teams competing for these prizes? And so NFTs, digital assets, tokenization here is a way that the public can actually get involved in this.
I am Crypto Wendio. I also go by Wendio on the internet, and I'm just a mom. I'm a mom that likes to talk about crypto and blockchain, digital assets, NFTs, digital collectibles. So the area I'm most bullish on when it comes to the NFT sector, again, is for musicians, for them to be able to utilize NFTs and grow an audience and maintain their audience with creating and offering them different types of utilities in that aspect. I'm excited to see this entire space evolve, and all of these different components or I guess subgroups of NFTs kind of come to life to where the person that decides to create a particular NFT can pick what route they want to go down.
Bill Barheit, I'm the founder and CEO of Abra. Abra is a wealth management and trading platform. We enable high net worth investors, venture capital firms, and other institutional investors buy, sell, trade, borrow, earn yield on crypto and other digital assets. The customers of Abra, in my opinion, want freedom. Ultimately, the users of crypto technology, whether it's the original cryptographic technology before it became cryptocurrency technology, it all comes down to the same thing, in my opinion, and that's freedom. Freedom to conduct commerce, freedom to live your life in a way that's peaceful, unencumbered by third parties or governments or bad actors, et cetera, et cetera. That's what people want, freedom. The biggest challenge that I see to the digital asset market is making it accessible while still preserving the tenets of why you would want a digital asset in the first place. If we can do that in a way where it passes the proverbial mom/grandma test, and we have moms and grandmas as clients doing this now, then I think we're going to basically see this start to take off in the next cycle.
In my view, this space is really just getting underway. Over time, in recent years, we've really broken through with the largest companies, brands, organizations, sports groups in the world, recognizing that this method of engaging and building community is better than anything that they've seen before. Now, because of that, because we now are in a position to recognize that NFTs have this magical ability to galvanize a community, you can start to think about, well, what behaviors do you want to drive in a community and why? And this is what brought me to this conclusion that there was another opportunity to innovate again and create the next generation of NFT, a new token type. An NFFT is a single token that can change state between fungible and non-fungible, the ultimate oxymoron, a token that's both fungible and non-fungible at the same time. When I saw the need for this, I did what I normally do when I have an idea for something that I'd like to see in the world. I go to my brother, much smarter than me and capable of actually doing things. I'm capable of thinking of things. And he does what he normally does, which says it's stupid and that makes no sense, it's an oxymoron. And then he comes back normally and says, I did it. And this case is no exception. He actually broke the back of this one. I saw a need, and I still see a spectacular opportunity to build something and put it into the world to just see what happens. You know, such an interesting experiment. But somebody has to break the back of how do you do it and make it work at scale, and that's what Greg did, my brother.
So what an NFFT, what a non-fungible fungible token is a token that can have both properties. So it can be used as a fungible token in the sense that $1 is fungible. You don't care which one you hand to the cashier when you're buying something, but it also is unique. It has a serial number. So why is it interesting to combine those two? It opens up a world of new rules that didn't exist before. So everything going on in the DeFi space, which is literally starting to become a significant part of the world economy, is where it's moving. And the aspects of how the financial system work, combined with a new way of gamifying uniqueness to fungible tokens, gives you sort of the best of both worlds. So what's great about fungible tokens is how they can move around, how there can be this liquidity, how you can have huge amounts used for everything from staking to trading to other kinds of gamification, actually. And then what's great about NFTs are that they can actually have emotional content or reward content that is different in its nature. So you can have great art there. You can have valuable things. It can be like baseball cards and other things that you actually care about and want to own. So the combination of the two is something that we have now proven.
For those of you who have spent any time microscopically looking at quantum light recently, it's incredibly annoying. If you look at it, it becomes a particle, and if you look away, it's a wave. The fact that that happens has to give us hope that you can have one thing that if you look at it is a particle, and if you don't look at it is a wave. So this idea of fungibility, everything acting as the same, everything being a quantity, that has wave-like quantities. But if you look at it individually, that's a particle. So what we need a token that acts like light. We need a quantum token. We need a quantum token that actually can change the way the entire crypto universe works, and I think we can do that now.
NFFT is a new way to look at bringing the gamification and community building capabilities of the NFT space to the liquidity opportunities of the fungible token space. The liquidity opportunities are dramatically better and more interesting in DeFi. Sure. There's an entire parallel financial system growing up, and it's not going anywhere. We're just getting to the first inning of what's going to be an explosive opportunity to build a parallel financial system that integrates with the existing financial system and augments it. Doesn't replace it, augments it in a way that is a benefit to humanity. But you can see right away that there's very different dynamics in play. The psychology of how one plays the stock market, the psychology of that mirrors how one plays DeFi and fungible tokens and what's happening with those exchanges. It's a very different mentality for the smaller numbers of non-fungible tokens and collections and how people perceive that ownership and what they do with them. But as we said before, and what I believe is that the smart digital assets, these gamified assets that can become programmable and interesting and dynamic, is the most powerful human communication tool since the introduction of the internet. There are a lot of proposals to do this. There's something like called ERC 404, which is a really interesting way to do fractional NFTs, where multiple people can own one NFT, right? Mm-hmm. Interesting for that purpose. Really smart people working on it. But useless for this purpose, where you want to move hundreds, millions, billions, maybe trillions of these around, where you can only move a very small amount on a blockchain because of the size of the blocks and how gas works. It would take days. And I wanted to see this in the world, but it wasn't until Greg came up with the way to actually do it, and then I saw it working, that I felt we would be ready to put this out there and hopefully unlock a wave of innovation and see what happens.
I think the NFFT, as I like to call it, is fundamentally a next phase of the potential of digital ownership and what can be possible. So this idea of sort of attaching an NFT, a non-fungible token, with a fungible token, and allowing them to sort of hitch a ride wherever they want to go is really powerful, because it's changing the cost to transact, because you don't have to sell and buy individual NFTs anymore, and that can get expensive.
I read the NFFT white paper, and it's really a brilliant idea. It combines all of the appeal of a fungible token and all of the utility and opportunity for engagement of a non-fungible token. A telco would have a lot of uses for an NFFT. The NFFT is really very viable as a retention tool for customers. You can imagine giving a customer an NFFT grant every 6 months, every 12 months, every month, that customer stays with you. And by developing certain elements of value, as those NFFTs accrue, you keep the customer. It's like an annuity, it's like a stock that'll pay a dividend, especially if you're not bound to those sorts of rules, so there can be a surprise and delight element, a sweepstakes element. Gee, now that I've got 10,000, should I really leave? Because, maybe there's something embedded in here, and next month I get a lifetime of free self-service. You could imagine that. An NFFT first of all, is registered on blockchain, so the ownership and existence of that is inviolate. And unlike a loyalty rewards, it can accrue value over time or be embedded with value. Whereas loyalty rewards, regardless of how companies try to make them relational, they end up being transactional. Here's a free gift card. Thank you for coming, right? Here's points back. Thank you for coming. So the NFFT holds great promise in being an asset that gains value over time, which is itself a relationship.
I think making the NFT technology and also the intersection of NFT and traditional fungible tokens, whether it's rewards or loyalty points, and merging those together and making it available to enterprises is super interesting. There's going to be lots of different examples of why companies are going to want to do this, right? In the analog, we have credit cards, reward points, airline miles, and they're all basically used to do marketing in different ways. I think the idea of combining ERC20 and ERC721 is super interesting. To me, it's like saying, okay, I can have airline miles, and then I can have collectibles with my airline miles, and maybe there's some unique properties to membership with points versus my membership status. And you can start to create lots of different iterations on that. And I think you're going to see all kinds of combinations of meme coins that have collectibles with them. I think gaming is the initial killer app, right? I think about the digital version of Pokemon where there's points, there's characters, they're combined. You can actually create little fiefdoms within that, where maybe I create my own sub points and my own sub characters. We're just scratching the surface as to what large Fortune 500 companies or the S&P 500 is going to want to do as it relates to all of these different types of marketing activities, membership activities. And I think companies like Vadim seem to be at the forefront of creating a platform to make that all work for these companies, which I think is super interesting.
I think the community aspect of NFFT is one of the most important things about those ideas being digitized on top of blockchain, because after all, we're all a community, and the ideas that we believe in and we formalize in computer systems get distributed, and the best ideas and also sometimes the most fun ideas cut on and changing our world. So you can think of social networks and others as ideas that have been formalized and fun and cut on and change our world. So I think definitely the approach of gamification of NFFTs and such ideas can have a great effect.
When we're talking about interoperability, especially with NFTs, I think that technology is absolutely amazing. And I'm so glad that the NFFT white paper kind of discussed that a little bit, because let's face it, Ethereum was the end all be all when it comes to chains. And then we have Solana, we have Cardano, we have all these other layer ones that are actively competing. So I think it's going to be important for people to be able to transfer their NFT to a different chain if they want. I think it's going to be important evolving, especially with digital assets and NFTs, to be interoperable, because let's face it, we have so many different chains now, and you don't want to get stuck on a chain if you have a negative experience.
There's nothing more important in building trust in a community than transparency and communication. I believe that some of the innovations that we've brought to bear have brought communities to the table that now can thrive even better because of NFFTs. What NFFT will do is it takes a community that maybe is more focused on the fungible nature of the liquidity and the price that's going up and down and moving, and it creates a reason to communicate, a reason to say, hey, guess what? We got this new game dynamic now. We've got this new thing that we're introducing, right? Now you can do that today, and they do. The best communities do that. But what they have is an awkwardness with like connecting their token to their engagement modality and their gamification and their NFTs. This fuses them and gives a more kind of natural, organic way to engage with your community.
The future of the NFFT from the standpoint of the consumer is going to be driven by a lot of companies that want to leverage it for a different approach to engagement and marketing. So we think that'll be one big application. But we also think there's a completely independent world that has nothing to do with consumers and companies, that are just people having fun, playing around with the way people play with NFTs, the way people play with meme coins. We think there's a new game to play here.
Right now, there's a lot of let's call them meme coins out there in blockchain, and it just never seems to end. People love meme coins, and at the end of the day, you want to ask why. Why is Dogecoin so popular and Elon tweeting about it? Why is the Shiba community called the Shiba Army? There's this inherent sort of energy around sort of community that exists digitally for these projects that has a life of its own. So imagine with an NFFT what can happen now if those tokens can now be associated with an identity through an NFT at the same exact time. All it can do is catalyze more communities. So I think there's a lot of potential here in terms of like a community like Shiba Inu, where they could take this type of technology and engrave various unique Shiba characters on different tokens and have an unlimited supply of Shibas running around in the world, where you feel a little bit more kinship to your community based on the tokens that you collect, and maybe some of them you don't want to get rid of, and that creates a scarcity idea.
So imagine Dogecoin, and you wake up in the morning and there's a billboard right by your house, and it says, have you looked at your Doge recently? You say, yeah, sure. Doge has billions of them, and maybe I have 5 million. I know I have 5 million. I say, no, have you looked at them? There's no concept of looking at an individual fungible token. It's nonsensical. So Elon Musk says you can buy a Tesla with your Doge. So if you're on the way to do that and you see that billboard, you're going to say, wait a minute. If one of those Doge coins is worth $1 million, or if I have 7 out of 10 for a set, or I've got Taylor Swift tickets hidden in my Doge, I'm not going to go and buy that Tesla with those Doge. I'm going to look at them first. So the first gamification behavior is people are going to look at their fungible tokens before they lose them.
We were initially calling it ERC 741 because we thought that the best way to do this was probably on Ethereum, but we've come to understand that it is a combination of the concept of an ERC20 and the concept of an ERC 721. So the concept of an ERC 741 makes sense. But it turns out we are not going to be beholden to even EVM compatible blockchains only. This will work on Solana, which is not EVM compatible. This will work on any blockchain. So what I'm really happy to announce is that there's a new concept called an entanglement chain, a new blockchain that keeps track of all the other blockchains. And this end chain concept allows us to create a immutable, transparent, blockchain-based meta layer of ownership so that we can keep track no matter what you do. You buy, sell, trade, move them around, etc. We'll know that these things are always entangled. So you will always be able to change state one way and change them back with all existing applications. And what this allows us to do, which also is different than any other theories or things that we're seeing kind of people postulate on out there, is it's not just a new token type for new projects. You can go and entangle any existing project and either galvanize an existing community that's thriving or revitalize a community that needs a kick in the butt with some new energy. You can go to that community now and entangle it and gamify it in this way. So the underlying mechanism is now a new L1 blockchain called an N-chain, an entanglement chain.
This is the first time, I believe, in the history of NFTs where you can actually mint a token on all chains simultaneously. This will be most important for the mass tokenization of real-world assets. I happen to believe that the Venn diagram of all assets and the tokenized assets will be an exact circle pretty soon. Every single asset that can be tokenized will.
Final word is get yourself a non-fungible, fungible token and build something that'll surprise all of us.